There is a character at the absolute center of Genshin Impact's universe. They have traveled between worlds, challenged gods, and are the only person in Teyvat who can remember its true unaltered history. In the lore, they are one of the most powerful beings we have ever met, and yet, for the most of us, they spend their time on the bench. This isn't just a case of poor balancing or a character that didn't age well. The weaknesses of the Traveler is a deliberate choice by HoYoverse. It is a paradox designed into the very core of the game. In fact, I would argue that the Traveler isn't just a weak protagonist, they are the key to understanding the fundamental conflict between the game Genshin Impact wants to be and the game it has to be. So today we're going to break down that paradox. We will explore the calculated cycle of their gameplay, their strange, silent role in the story, and why after all this time, this character is more conflicted than ever. I want to give a massive shout out to the sponsor of today's video, LD Shop. We know that polling for our favorite characters can get expensive. Well, LD Shop is a formal, safe, and reliable top-up platform that offers fantastic discounts with Genshin Impact top-ups starting from 15% off. For example, the Welkin normally costs $5 in the official store, but here it is only $3, and the $100 Genesis Crystal Pack is just $75. The best part is how simple and safe it is. You don't need to link your account or give any passwords. All you need is your server and game UID. You just pick what you want, enter your UID, and then you check out. And there it is, right on my screen. It is fast, and you get to see what you received in game. You can still activate your first top-up bonus when you buy through LD Shop. You don't have to choose between the endgame bonus and their discount. LD Shop is also giving our community a massive bonus. If you register right now using my link in the description, you will immediately get a 15% off coupon and an exclusive 5% off coupon. You can use these to save up to $50, which is an incredible deal. On top of that, they have a campaign where if you spend over $80 in 1 month, you can claim a free Welkin Moon on their homepage. Huge thanks to LD Shop for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back into the content. So to really understand why the Traveler feels the way that they do, we have to look past their individual abilities and focus on the one thing that truly defines them: the business model. In almost any other story-driven game you can think of, the protagonist is, well, the main character. They are the one you invest in, the one that grows with you, and often the one who becomes the pillar of your team's strength. But in Genshin Impact, the protagonist is designed from the ground up to be sidelined. It is a strange feeling, but it is not an accident. This comes down to something we see in a lot of these games, an idea that you could call free character syndrome. And to put it simply, if the character that every single player gets for free is one of the best in the game, a lot of people won't feel the need to spend money to get the new shiny character on the limited banner. It is a straightforward business decision. A powerful, universally available free unit is, for the most part, bad for sales. Think about a game like Pokemon, for example. You almost always keep your starter on your team for the entire journey because it is designed to be a reliable powerhouse. In a lot of games, the main hero is usually a cornerstone of your party. Genshin completely flips this idea on its head. Your starter is a benchwarmer by trade. And this is the key point to grasp because it informs everything else. The Traveler is not weak because of a mistake in their design or a lack of creativity. They are weak because they have to be. They have been given a deliberate power ceiling. They are calibrated to be just good enough to get you through the main story quest, good enough to solve the puzzles, and good enough to see the world. But they are never, ever meant to be exceptional. They aren't meant to compete with the characters the game needs to sell you. This single foundational decision is the root cause of almost every other issue we are about to discuss. It is the reason their gameplay across every element follows such a predictable pattern of disappointment, and it is why their role in the story can often feel so bizarrely disconnected. It all starts here. And with that foundational decision in place, that the Traveler must never outshine the characters you pay for, we see a clear pattern emerge every time we visit a new nation. It is a cycle of gameplay disappointment that has repeated itself for years. It started, of course, with Animo. This is their first attempt, and it shows. The kit on paper promises crowd control, pulling enemies together, but in practice, the abilities were clumsy and often did the exact opposite. The burst was a tornado that would pick up smaller enemies and launch them across the map, forcing you to chase after them. It was counterintuitive, and the Traveler was immediately overshadowed by literally every other Animo unit that was released. And then came Geo, which was a brief moment of utility. For a little while, Geo Traveler was actually a decent pick for the early Geo teams. They had good damage multipliers and nice crit rate buff, but their entire kit was built around Geo constructs, making making big rocks pop out of the ground. It was a mechanic that the game itself quickly moved away from, leaving Geo Traveler as a relic of an abandoned design philosophy. And so seeing that raw power wasn't working out, the design shifted. If the Traveler could not be a good damage dealer, maybe they could have a utility niche. This led to Electro Traveler, the battery. Their whole purpose was to generate energy for the rest of the team. The only problem was, the battery needed its own, even bigger battery. The Traveler's energy needs were so high that they couldn't even fuel themselves, let alone anyone else. On top of that, you had this clunky mechanic where you had to physically run over little amulets on the ground to get the energy, which just slowed down combat. But then with Dendro, we got a glimmer of hope. For the first time, the Traveler was a genuinely good option. When Sumeru launched, Dendro was new and there were very few characters who could apply it. The Traveler filled that role perfectly, and this proves something important. The Traveler can be good, but only when the competition is non-existent. As soon as other Dendro units started to appear, especially the Archon Nahida, the Traveler was immediately sent back to the bench. Their usefulness was temporary by design. And after all that brief high, we got the catastrophic setback, Hydro Traveler.
It's the biggest piece of dog.
This was the absolute lowest point. It is so low that people are surprised that it is that low. You have to try to go that low. It is widely considered to be one of the worst, if not the worst character in the entire game. The damage is non-existent. The buffs were non-existent. The elemental burst summons a slow-moving bubble that just floats past enemies without hitting them more than once or twice. In a game with a character like Neuvillette, whose beam feels like a Blastoise cannon, the Traveler's skill is like a Squirtle water gun. This wasn't just another weak hit. It felt like a regression. It showed a complete lack of learning or evolution, as if all the previous attempts meant nothing. And this brings us to the modern era with Pyro Traveler. You can see that an effort was made. It has a unique off-field application mechanic, but as the pattern dictates, it is implemented with a fatal flaw. The application is too slow, happening only once every 3 seconds, which makes it useless for the very reactions it is meant to enable. The Archon of Natlan eventually gets a motorcycle. With this kit, it feels like the Pyro Traveler did not even get a scooter. And to really drive the point home, pun intended, they gave the Traveler a brief super mode in a single weekly boss arena where they get immense power buffs. It is a painful tease, a glimpse of the godlike power the story says they have, but it is locked away in a piece of content that nobody cares about. It solidifies the pattern perfectly. Even when new ideas are introduced, they are always implemented with heavy restrictions to ensure the Traveler remains mediocre. But this strange cycle of disappointment isn't just limited to their gameplay, it extends directly into their role in the story, where we see a similar fundamental conflict between what the Traveler is supposed to be and what they actually are. To understand this, we need to draw a line between two terms that people often use interchangeably: protagonist and main character. They are not the same thing. The protagonist is the character who moves the plot forward. They are the camera we follow through the world. The main character is the one with the emotional stake, the one who is most deeply affected by the story's events. In Genshin, the Traveler is almost always the protagonist. We follow them from nation to nation, but they are rarely the main character. That role is almost always reserved for the Archons or the other key 5 stars of that region, the ones that they're trying to sell you. It is their story, their crises. We are just the catalyst who shows up to get the things moving. We are a glorified tour guide, a lost NPC in someone else's cutscene. This paradox reached its breaking point in Inazuma. For some reason, the story tried to force the Traveler into the main character role, making them a captain of the resistance. It felt completely unnatural. Here we have the characters like Kazuha, who lost his friend to the Vision Hunt decree, and Kokomi, who is leading her people in a civil war. They have real personal stakes in the conflict, but the story sidelines them so our Traveler can get a promotion. It just didn't work. This confusion about their role leads to another problem. The Traveler is stuck in a silent protagonist limbo. They aren't a true blank slate, like in a game like, I don't know, Dark Souls or Baldur's Gate, where you create your own character and project yourself onto them. The Traveler has a set backstory, a clear goal to find their sibling, and at times, very strong predefined options. But they are not a fully realized character either, because they barely speak. This creates awkward awkward interactions. Paimon has to carry every conversation, and the few times the traveler does have a strong opinion, like their distrust of the 𝗖cie, it can completely clash with the player's own feelings. If you, the player, happen to find a character like 𝗖cie sympathetic, the traveler's hostile reaction feels jarring. It breaks that self-insert illusion because their thoughts are no longer your thoughts. And the main reason this limbo even exists, the mechanical crutch that allows for all of this, is Paimon. Paimon is both the cause of and the solution to the traveler's silence. She exists to do the talking for them, but in doing so, she robs the traveler of any chance to ever develop a personality of their own. She simplifies complex emotional moments, repeats obvious information, and acts as a buffer between the traveler and the world. And the end result is that most characters in Teyvat aren't really talking to you, the protagonist, they are talking to Paimon. The traveler is often just standing there, nodding, while their floating companion handles the diplomacy. It is a bizarre dynamic where the hero becomes a bystander in their own conversations. But to be fair, it seems HoYoverse eventually realized that this was a problem, because after Inazuma, we saw a clear and deliberate shift in their storytelling philosophy. It's starting with Sumeru, and then refined even further in Fontaine. The writers seem to find the right role for the traveler. They embrace the idea of the traveler as a witness and a catalyst, rather than the sole hero. And if you don't know, a catalyst is just something that makes a reaction happen, and that is what the traveler became. In Sumeru, they weren't the one to outsmart the sages. They were the crucial link, the one person Nahida could communicate with from her prison. In Fontaine, they weren't the one to pass the judgment or save the nation. They were the neutral party who can connect the dots between Farina, Neuvillette, and Navia. In these stories, their presence was absolutely essential, but it didn't overshadow the local cast. It allowed the actual main characters of that nation to have their moments, and it felt far more natural, and this improvement has continued. From what we've seen in Not Cry, this philosophy is being pushed even further. The story has been praised for integrating character quests directly into the main plot, making the world and its inhabitants more connected. They have also started presenting the lore more directly, introducing new guides like Inefa, who is, let's be honest, a better guy than Paimon. This suggests the writers are aware of their own narrative shortcomings and are actively trying to correct them. But there is one place where the traveler is allowed to break this witness role, and it is the one place where they truly shine, the Dainsleif quest. These quests are the one exception where the traveler is the main character, and it works perfectly. Why? Because the story is fundamentally about them. It is not about a nation's crises, it is about their past, it is about their sibling, and it is about the fate of Khaenri'ah. In these moments, the traveler has real personal stakes. They have agency, they have a voice. It is the one part of the game where they are allowed to be the character the opening cutscene promised us. And so it is clear they have found a narrative formula that works for both the Archon quest and the main plot, but that only solves half of the equation. This brings the entire argument full circle, back to the unresolved disconnect between the story and the game itself. Because while the writing is taking 2 steps forward, the core design of the traveler is still stuck 1 step back. The story improvements in Not Cry are a huge step in the right direction, but they absolutely did nothing to fix the fundamental weaknesses of the traveler's combat kit. It is almost certain that their new elemental form, whenever we get it, will follow the same tired pattern of mediocrity we have seen time and time again. And this brings us back to that disconnect between the story and the gameplay. I don't know what it is, but Traveler in the gameplay directly contradicts who they are in the story. In Genshin's case, the story tells us that the Traveler is a world-hopping, god-slaying being. The cutscene against Child even shows that they are using multiple elements at once. Yet in the game, we can't even swap elements without visiting a statue. It is a stark contrast to other games, where protagonists like Rover and Wuthering Waves are shown mastering and switching between elements mid-fight, truly owning their story and turning the world into their stage. But our Traveler, the gameplay shows us a C-tier unit who hits like a wet noodle and is often one of the worst options for your team. The two realities just doesn't match up. And what makes this weakness even more frustrating is the investment the game asks of you. With every new nation, you are not just unlocking a new set of skills, you are getting a new list of chores. You have to farm an entirely new set of artifacts, you have to level up an entirely new set of talents, and often using the same of the rarest materials in the game, like crowns, for example. I mean, if you crown your Traveler, I don't know what to tell you at this point, but you are paying a premium price in terms of the time and the resources for a character that will almost always be underwhelming. Meanwhile, in games like Xenozone Zero, protagonists are getting free cosmetic units. While after 5 years, the Traveler is still wearing the same stocky clothes they started with. It is an investment that never pays off. And finally, even with the improvements to the Archon quest, the Traveler's silence still leaves a huge hole in other parts of the game. This is most obvious in the character story quests. These quests are supposed to be intimate moments, a chance to get to know a new 5-star character on a personal level. But because the Traveler doesn't speak, the conversation isn't between you and them, it is between them and Paimon. Any chance of forming a real believable bond with the protagonist is lost. The moments fall flat. It makes the heart of the story feel hollow, even when the grand plot is moving in the right direction. So after all this, what are we left with? We are left with a character in a state of permanent contradiction, a character in limbo. The Traveler is the narrative center of the entire universe, the axis on which the whole story turns, and yet in gameplay, they are a functional afterthought. They are a character with a deep universe-spanning backstory, someone who has seen the birth and death of stars, and yet in their own story, they are often denied a voice and personality. In a way, their entire journey mirrors a core conflict within Genshin Impact itself. It is the constant tension between being a rich, story-driven open-world RPG and being a restrictive, monetization-focused gacha game. The Traveler is the living embodiment of that compromise. They are the awkward middle ground where those two opposing forces meet. And what is most interesting is that HoYoverse has demonstrated a clear ability to evolve. They have improved the Traveler's role in the story, finding a balance that actually works, but the foundational gameplay issues remain completely untouched. This raises a critical question about what their long-term vision for this character really is. With the story's direction showing such a clear improvement, do you believe HoYoverse will ever go back and address the Traveler's core gameplay and investment issues? Or is their role as the witness in both the story and in the gameplay now set in stone? Let me know your thoughts below, but that is all from me, 𝗖𝗍𝗆𝗆𝗵𝘁, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers!